In 1971, in the quiet town of Hexham, Northumberland, two young boys were digging in their garden. Their names were Colin and Leslie Robson. They weren't looking for anything in particular, just playing bare hands in the dirt, the way children do. But what they found was not ordinary. Beneath the soil, two stone objects emerged. Round, heavy, roughly the size of a fist. Shaped like human heads. Faces crudely carved with hollow eyes and sharp noses. The texture was ancient, the feeling uneasy. The boys took them home, placed them on a windowsill in the house they shared with their parents. No one knew it yet, but the moment those stones entered the home, something had changed. That night, strange things began to happen. Glass shattered with no explanation. Objects moved when no one was watching. Footsteps echoed across empty rooms. Doors opened on their own. The air felt heavier charged. Then came the scent of something sour, lingering with no source. Cold spots formed in warm rooms. Whispers were heard in the corners of silence. And always those stone heads, watching. The family grew frightened, but the heads remained, until the day something worse arrived. One night, the Robson's daughter awoke screaming. She claimed she saw a half-man, half-beast standing in her bedroom. Its eyes were yellow, its hands clawed, and it vanished before anyone else could see. The family dismissed it as a dream, until it happened again. This time, the boys saw it too. A creature, lurking in the hallway. Tall, dark, hunched, then gone. The Robsons had no explanation, but they had suspicions. The heads. What were they? And why had things only started after their discovery? The family decided they had to leave. They moved away, seeking peace. The heads were passed to a researcher named Mrs. Anne Ross. She was a Celtic scholar curious about their origin. She brought them into her own home in London. But the strangeness did not stay behind. In fact, it followed. They say history repeats itself. But what about the parts we forgot? Welcome to Echoes of History, the channel where we dig up the dusty corners of the past to uncover the weird, the wild, and the wait, what? Stories they didn't teach you in school. Grab your curiosity, and maybe a cup of tea, because what you're about to hear might just change how you see the world. Mrs. Ross began to experience disturbances at night. She heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate. They climbed the stairs when no one else was home. Books fell from shelves. Lights flickered without cause. Her daughter reported a figure in her room, wolf-like, almost human. The sightings were vivid and consistent. It was not one dream, but many. The heads were moved from room to room. But the phenomena followed. Mrs. Ross, a scholar grounded in logic, found herself doubting her own senses, yet the fear was real, as was the presence. She began to suspect the heads were more than archaeological curiosities. They held something, some kind of force. Whether ancient or recent, she couldn't be sure, but it felt alive, eventually. She removed them from her home. But even then, the disturbances continued for a time. Fading slowly, like a storm that had passed, but leaving damage behind. The stone heads were eventually sent to the British Museum for analysis. Their origin was uncertain. Some tests suggested they were not ancient at all but modern concrete, cast from a mold, not carved by ancient hands. If true, it raised a different kind of mystery. How could something modern carry such darkness, or were the materials misleading? Had something older taken residence inside something new? Folk legends often speak of vessels, objects that become containers, not of clay or metal but of spirit. Could the heads have become such vessels, or were they always meant to be? Hexham itself is old. Its stones bear Roman and Celtic scars. Its soil is rich with memory. Maybe the heads absorbed more than water in the ground. Maybe they carried the echo of older rites, of things buried but never truly gone. The villagers remembered tales of creatures in the woods, of spirits bound to stone, of transformations in the moonlight. Perhaps these weren't just stories. Perhaps the Robsons didn't find the heads. Perhaps the heads found them. And perhaps they weren't finished yet, only beginning. What is a curse? Is it a word spoken aloud or something older, carved into stone and time? The Hexham Heads seemed to carry something that defied language. Not a scream, but a quiet distortion. A presence that altered space. Those who came near them felt it. Even the skeptics. Especially the skeptics. Mrs. Anne Ross, the scholar who housed the heads, had studied Celtic folklore for years. She believed in cultural memory, not supernatural fear. But what she experienced in her home unsettled even her structured mind. One night, she awoke just before dawn. Her room was cold. Despite the radiator humming softly, she heard footsteps on the landing, slow, measured, heavy. She opened her bedroom door and saw it, a figure, part man, part animal, towering, hair covered, with an elongated face, yellow eyes that flickered in the hallway shadows. The creature looked at her, then turned and vanished down the stairs. She did not scream. She did not move. She simply closed the door and sat down on the bed. Her hands were trembling. Her breath came in shallow bursts. She wrote down what she saw, not as a believer but as a witness, a folklorist caught in her own myth. That creature would be seen again by her daughter and others. The figure came at night, appeared in the corners, watched, then left, but it never harmed, only disturbed. Some began to call it the Hexham Werewolf, a term both dramatic and strangely fitting in local Northumberland lore. Such creatures were not unknown. Stories of shape-shifting spirits go back centuries, called lycanthropes in medieval texts or wolvers in older tongues. Guardians of boundary places neither human nor beast. Stone was often used to contain them, or to summon them. Ancient heads, carved with crude faces, were common in Celtic ritual, known as Celtic cold heads. They were believed to house the spirit of the otherworld, not evil, not good, just potent. Perhaps the Hexham Heads were part of this lineage. Perhaps they remembered something we forgot. But that theory was challenged in 1974. A man named Dick Craigie came forward. He claimed he had made the heads himself just a few years earlier, using concrete and water in a mold. He said his children lost them in the garden while playing. If true, it would mean the heads were modern, not ancient, not cursed, just a prank that spiraled, but there were problems. The original heads had disappeared. The ones tested may have been copies or replacements, and Craigie's claim had gaps. Scholars pointed at inconsistencies in his timeline, and why had his story taken years to emerge? Meanwhile, Mrs. Ross and others held their position. They believed the heads were old or possibly pre-Roman. Some suggested 2nd century craftsmanship. Others pointed to similarities with Norse idol heads. Either way, they were not simply toys. They were symbols and perhaps vessels. As the debate continued, the stories grew. Another family reported disturbances after handling the heads. Pets reacted violently when near them. Plants wilted in their presence. The air turned inexplicably cold. Time itself seemed to shift. Clocks stopped. Watches froze. But again, nothing was ever definitively recorded. The heads were quiet when studied, but active when watched alone. Just like a story, it only came alive when believed. Were the Hexham Heads a test of perception? Of what the human mind allows itself to see? Or were they a breach? A place where something older slipped through? Even the name Hexham echoed in old superstitions. Hex from the Germanic root for witchery. Ham for settlement. A place of spells and shelter, a fitting birthplace for a modern myth. But myth does not mean falsehood. Myth means memories shaped by emotion, stories riddled not to explain but to endure. The Hexham Heads are still remembered, not because they were solved, but because they weren't. They remain in a liminal space between object and legend, between artifact and apparition, between truth and whatever lies just beyond it. Stones don't forget. They carry the weight of time without complaint. They hold warmth in the day and whisper cold at night. The Hexham Heads were just small stones, but something about them lingers more than shape, more than story. They became part of a larger memory, a reminder that some things we dig up were meant to stay buried, or perhaps not buried, but honored. The question was never only what are they, it was why do we feel what we feel around them. A carved object can't growl in the dark, yet people heard it. Concrete can't open doors or summon shadows, yet people watched it happen. Belief is not always a trick of the mind. Sometimes it's a key to something older. In Celtic traditions, stones with faces were sacred, offerings to gods of the earth, guardians of thresholds. They were kept near homes for protection or to bind something in place. When the Robson boys uncovered the heads, maybe they weren't discovering. Maybe they were unbinding. The land around Hexham is old. Roman forts lie broken beneath the soil. Pagan rites echo in the names of hills and rivers. And every house rests on forgotten things. Ghosts, perhaps, or stories waiting for breath. The Hexham Heads became that story. Passed from scholar to skeptic, from family to legend, touched by science, and yet not reduced by it. Today, their exact whereabouts are unclear. Some say they were destroyed, others believe they were misplaced in storage, mislabeled, and asleep. Or perhaps someone is keeping them quietly, in a box, or a drawer, or beneath the floorboards. Still watching, still waiting. The myth remains active because the line was never drawn. No final answer was given, and maybe it shouldn't be, because not all truths are made to be solved. Some are meant to haunt, to remind us that the world is still stranger than we pretend, that the rational can be porous, that wonder and dread our neighbors. The Hexham Werewolf may have been hallucination, or projection, or folklore wearing a modern face, but it was felt. It left fingerprints in memory, in language, and breath. And what else is history, if not the residue of the felt? We keep telling the stories because they resonate deeper than fact. They vibrate in the same key as dreams. And deep down, we are all dreamers. We long for explanations, but we live among shadows. The Hexham Heads offer us no clean ending. They are not puzzle pieces to be placed. They are questions sculpted into stone, and that, perhaps, is their true purpose, not to be understood, but to be contemplated, a mirror for our fascination with the liminal, the half-seen, the half-known, the places where history frays into myth. And Ross would never forget what she saw, nor would the Robsons. But time moves on, and stories soften at the edges. Yet some details stay sharp. A figure in the hall, cold breath on the skin, a carved face on a gray stone watching. The Hexham Heads do not belong to one generation. They belong to a timeless curiosity, the human urge to lift the earth and ask what lies beneath, to look into the face of the unknown and feel something look back. Whether cursed or crafted, sacred or staged, they made us feel. They made us wonder. They made us afraid not of monsters, but of mystery. And perhaps that's what truly lives in them. Not spirits, but the raw pulse of the unexplained. That low hum beneath the rational. The chill when the room goes still. The heartbeat of folklore. Some will say the heads were a hoax. Others, a haunting. But no one forgets them. Because no matter how small they are, they carried weight. Not just physical, but symbolic. The Hexham Heads are not just relics. They are reminders. That mystery is still possible. That silence can still speak. That something carved can still shape belief. So we leave them in the soil of our minds. Unearthed, but never resolved. Tameless, like the thing that walked the stairs. That's it for today's Forgotten Tale. If this story made you raise an eyebrow don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that dusty little bell so you never miss another echo from the past. Drop it in the comments. We're always listening for new echoes. Got a weird bit of history you think we should cover? Until next time, keep your curiosity loud and your history weird. That's it for today's Forgotten Tale. If this story made you